Can you all hear me okay? Let me make sure. Okay, let me try something else. Okay. I'm just going to make sure that I do my spiel over again. It looks like there might have been some technical issues. The recording has been started. So I'm just going to retrack and do this again just to make sure that everyone can hear me okay. But welcome everyone to the NSTA STEM21. My name is Acacia McKenna and I'm this session's moderator and presenter. I want to thank you all for being flexible with me. It looks like we might have had some audio issues, but I'm going to present strategies to integrate project-based learning in diverse K through 12 environments. If there's any issues, I want you to just please feel free to pop them in the chat and let me know if there's any other audio issues that we have. But the presentation today will last approximately 45 minutes, which will include the Q&A. And please feel free to use the chat window to communicate with other participants and presenters about the topic being discussed. To avoid presenter distractions, we have disabled your ability to turn on the microphone and the web camera. Prior to the end of this session, I will share the URL to the survey to provide feedback on this session. So it is my pleasure to go ahead and kick off the session today. Thank you all for coming. Today, we're going to be talking about strategies to integrate project-based learning. And as I mentioned, I wanted to just tell you a little bit of background about myself. I have been with the National Science Teaching Association for approximately 6.5 years as a director of competitions. And it has been my pleasure and honor to engage with students and educators across the United States and internationally to engage in STEM competitions. And throughout this time, we've had so much fun in interacting with educators across the United States and internationally and doing lots of fun things. And so I really wanted to share my knowledge of my experience as a translational research in the fields of microbiology and molecular biology and genetics, and also all of the many years, I guess about 10 or 12 years that I've worked with educators across the US and Canada to work with students and engage them in STEM. So I stopped my screen sharing just so I can go ahead and get everything organized on my end. I am the moderator and the presenter at the same time, so I just want to make sure that I have everything on my end completed, and then I'll start my slide sharing. So thank you for your patience. I had everything up, but I had a little bit of audio issues here. Okay, I think we should be all set now. Okay, so I'm going to start back sharing my screen again, and I will be looking for faces in the chat to chime in to make sure that you can see everything. It's so different in this virtual space, but feel free to pop in the chat. Sound volume keeps going up and down. Is this better? Perfect. Thank you all for helping me out there. So I'm going to start out by asking a question. What best describes your teaching role? If you wouldn't mind putting in the chat, do you support pre-K students, K through 12, 3 through 5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12? Awesome. I'm getting a wide range of K through 12 supporters. Lovely. Thank you for taking the time. Wow, some of you all grade bands, so that's awesome. And what learning environment are you working in school this year? Is it going to be asynchronous, virtual learning, aided with technology, or learning without technology, face-to-face? I know lots of schools are doing a combination of both, but it's going to be an interesting fall. So I'm just getting a pulse check in terms of what kind of learning environments you're going to be in this year. Awesome. And I'm also going to put into the chat box, I want to know how are you currently engaging your students in STEM? So I'm going to put a link in the chat so I can learn a little bit more about you, but also you can share with your colleagues on the call what you're doing in STEM right now. So I'm going to put a link to Padlet. You should see it now. Go ahead and click that link. And once you do, you will see that you can type into the Padlet with the plus box in the lower right-hand corner. So I'm going to go ahead and start typing something in. I see many of you getting into the site already. All right, so there's a teaching variety of engineering areas through project-based learning, STEM courses, interactivities, solar ovens, very cool. So continue to put what your initial plans are. I see school gardens, creating a new STEM course, hands on real world problems. So you are all in the right space. And I'd love to learn from you all and have you information share with each other as well as we go throughout the presentation. So, to think about how you're engaging with your students, and you can continue writing. I know there's lots of people on the Zoom that are sharing their ideas and high school learning labs, STEM curriculum. I think it's amazing. Go ahead and keep typing in on what you're planning on doing. Just kicking off how to think about strategies to engage students in project based learning. One of the first things in thinking of establishing a space that's safe and supportive is setting a classroom culture of collaboration and project based learning. So, whenever I'm dealing with students and getting them to work into teams and groups, there's always that awkward silence, right, with the students. Even if they know people or they're working together in groups, sometimes it's just kind of getting the brainstorming process starting is just basically having that collaborative culture and setting those cultural norms and expectations up front. So there's definitely many tips and tricks that work really well. And I know I'm preaching to the choir because many of you are doing this already with your students, but there is the power of positive school culture and thinking of how to make a space that is conducive to learning. So I want to go ahead and stop sharing for a second, and I'm going to try sharing a video, and I'm going to be looking in the chat just to make sure that the video is going to be displayed appropriately. So I'm going to start sharing now. Let's see how this goes. All right.
You think of an extraordinary high school. Top-notch academics? Definitely. Lots of interesting electives? Sure. But there's something else that's equally essential, harder to spot, and not as common as it should be. Schools need to be places where kids feel positive and safe. Places where every student feels they belong. Schools with positive culture have strong policies that address bullying, inclusion, and diversity. But policies aren't enough. The best test of a school's culture is to talk to the students.
The community, it's very diverse. You have different cultures and different types of traditions and stuff, but altogether it's a nice community because people here are respectful and, you know, they're very nice to each other.
You also want to see how they act. Students look happy and at home. They're comfortable voicing their ideas.
Find more than one people, like all the migrants together, is more powerful than just one person making a change.
In a school with a positive culture, you see the celebration and acceptance of all kinds of students. Whether an academic enthusiast, an athlete, an artist, whatever culture, gender, or personality, there's an acceptance and appreciation of everyone.
I will stop sharing right now, but feel free to put your reactions in the chat to the video and whether you're in favor and supporting that information. I know the video was geared to high school students, but I would definitely support and share that this is translational to all grade levels. Having that culture and classroom space to where you feel safe and heard and included is definitely going to foster project-based learning. and engagement with your students. And I will certainly share all of these resources within the NSTA platform should you want to go back and revisit that. So I'll definitely have a link to that video, but it's definitely on this slide and I will have it, but I will pop that over in the resources for NSTA Engage as well. So, in thinking of project-based learning and getting your students engaged, definitely some tips to make it realistic, fun, and engaging. So, in talking with students, especially in topics that are some would say a little nerve wracking for students who are apprehensive to STEM or kind of nervous about it. Making it relatable and realistic to them using current events or hands on demonstrations and wondering always works really well. Relating to things that they're interested in. So, short group projects could be to engage students in real world issues related to local news or national news. It could be something that they're just curious about or something that has affected their families. And so, I wanted to weave through storytelling and just testimonials also from students who have taken a deeper dive into project based learning and, sorry about that, and utilized learning efforts and engagements in STEM through project based learning. So you can actually hear from students who have done this and tried project based learning. If it wasn't a first time, just doing it in a different way. So I'm going to stop screen sharing now and show another video with some student reflections and approaches of what they thought project based learning was and how that resonated with them.
Hi, I'm Ethan,
And my name is Michelle.
and our project, Lycosa, is a potential cure for pancreatic cancer. I was watching the news and saw that two very inspirational people, Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Alex Trebek, had both passed away from pancreatic cancer. As Michelle and I kept researching about cancer, we noticed that even though there were so many advancements in treating most cancers, pancreatic cancer still lacked an effective cure. We saw this as an opportunity to learn more about a topic we were interested in outside of the school curriculum, and this Explore Vision competition was the perfect catalyst to allow us to do so.
Initially, Ethan and I were motivated by the fact that so little progress has occurred in the treatment of pancreatic cancer. As news of our project spread to teachers across campus, friends and teachers began to reach out to us and share their stories of their lost loved ones. I think this is where the two of us became so touched that we realized that our project was more than just an idea, but instead a real possibility that could help change our world.
COVID-19 has definitely made this year challenging for everyone. The two of us weren't able to meet in person as often because of COVID regulations, so we often had to rely on meeting with each other virtually. This was definitely frustrating sometimes, especially when it came to building the 3D model and the website, but we worked through it.
Despite these obstacles, Ethan and I were able to use a lot of online resources such as Canva, Animator, and BioRender to create our final project. Overall, I think he and I both learned a lot from this experience. We learned a lot about oncology, synthetic biology, and nanotechnology, and it was really cool seeing the lessons and topics we learned in class being implemented in a real-world application. If we could, I think Ethan and I would definitely do this again.
I will stop sharing now, but that's definitely one group of students that were involved in a high school project based learning through the NSTA and Toshiba sponsored competition where they worked together. And despite some of the challenges that we all have faced during a global pandemic and all of the different verities and varieties of things we had to think about during this academic school year, it can be done to get your students engaged in hands on demonstrations, wondering, brainstorming. And you can hear from these students that they use various tools such as Canva and others, virtual talks, whether it's FaceTime, Google Duo, or various ways to collaborate and communicate to get the job done. I also wanted to share another perspective where students were working with things that affected the environment. So looking at that and how they kind of thought about things, and then we'll dive into more tips and strategies here in a moment. So I will start sharing my screen again. And
idea because we thought solar cars were inefficient and expensive for everyday people. So we wanted to come up with something that was more efficient and less expensive.
We addressed global warming in a way that many people could contribute. We decided to go with transportation because it uses fossil fuels, the main contributor to greenhouse gas emissions.
And this is how we came up with algae electricity. The idea of solar cars is not new, but the current technology is still inefficient and expensive, so we looked to nature for inspiration.
Biological processes are of highest efficiency, so we went with the attributes of algae because of its efficient photosynthesis process, the electric eel because of its efficient electricity production, and the gecko because of its efficient grip.
I'm going to stop sharing with this one. The students in that particular one were looking at global issues and ways that we can impact the environment. So you can see that they were really excited. So they were able to explore it in the environment in their communities during this global pandemic and maximize being outdoors to work on their projects and communicate with one another. So those are just some of the strategies. I'm going to navigate now back to the presentation and share my screen again. So you'll see a little transition here. Give me one moment. All right. So, in thinking of some of the other tools and tips for engaging students, learning is also very social, providing opportunities for collaboration and thinking of ways that we can engage students and engage them in STEM. There are multiple platforms, and as you can see from the students, they use Canva, BioRender, Google Classroom, Google Slides, Google Documents, an old-fashioned pencil and paper, and a phone call to get the job done. So making sure that the learning environment promotes collaboration and you can get everyone talking is going to be key, especially during the hybrid models. One of the things I like to encourage educators to do is to also try to get the parents involved. If there are ways that you can plan the learning and the social project time during a time that's conducive for your students, but also letting the parents know in advance what your plans are. It may be that you have a parent volunteer that helps you coordinate some of the meetups and the project-based learning breakouts, or is it just using Zoom or Google Teams to set up breakout rooms for the students to have smaller conversations in smaller groups? It can all be done. And just listening to some students from high school with the Shiitake Diapers project, they kind of touch on some of the social aspects of collaboration. So I'm going to actually share that now.
Diapers, a fully compostable diaper made from mycelium that captures carbon when grown. When coming up with our Toshiba Explore Vision regional winning innovation, we decided to primarily focus on ideas that had the biggest impact on climate change. We challenged ourselves to come up with an innovation that affected as many people as we could. Early on, we found the amazing carbon capturing abilities of mycelium, and from there we brainstormed different ways mycelium could be used. By choosing diapers, we are helping landfills and the atmosphere while reaching a vast amount of people.
To find an application for the mycelium carbon capturing technology, we spent a lot of hours on Zoom calls. At first, we had some pretty odd ideas, which included immortal mushrooms, because we thought that if we could make the mushrooms live forever, they'd be able to capture carbon forever. But we realized the flaws in that idea, and eventually we stumbled upon people using mycelium and mushrooms for insulation in houses as well as packaging. So we thought along those lines and thought to use mycelium in a way to produce a more eco-friendly version of a product. And that is how we arrived at using mycelium in diapers.
During this global pandemic, this competition has caused an impact on all three of us as both individuals and as a group. While Explore Vision was a project that we did in school, a lot of it had to be done on our own time, which did cause some additional stress. However, the competition also brought us closer together and allowed us to stay interacted with each other through Zoom calls or by texting, which really helped our mental state. The competition also gave us motivation and kept us sort of distracted from what was really going on with COVID-19.
So that was just another perspective in terms of how the students maximize some of the social aspects and collaboration. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Make sure I stop the video. But there's been a lot of dynamic discussion amongst the students and how project-based learning has affected them. So I want to navigate now back to my slide deck and so that you can see some of the other perspectives and integrating and working with students in STEM. And I hope that you do find the information that I'm presenting extremely helpful for you as you think about navigating STEM and project-based learning with your students. So I will navigate back to sharing and recognizing that interdisciplinary STEM based projects are rich and provide units of tremendous benefits. This is going to foster team building, collaboration, consensus building, interpersonal skills, and communications skills. And these are things that you can't get just by working independently. So the benefits of project-based learning, how to get your students together are key. And talking with the many students that engage with NSTA-based and sponsored competitions, especially with the Toshiba NSTA Explorer Vision competition, we touch over 20,000 students during an application year. So each academic cycle, we're engaging with that many students. And one of the main drivers and what they reflect on, not everyone is competitive in nature, and that is totally fine. But the competition actually provides the lens and landscapes for teachers to have lessons and topics that are open for students to think and build and develop ideas that can impact future. And so thinking of future technologies and future things to solve issues, they feel like they're contributing and they didn't realize maybe that through research and thinking through ideas and going through an engineering design process that they can make an impact. So I want to share this particular video of a K-3 team. Now this team is absolutely adorable. You will see them. I might have to fast forward a couple of parts, but this is a K-12 competition. And so this touches every grade band. So thinking about your experiences and your expertise and the students that you work with, just look at the younger students in elementary and see some of their key takeaways. I will show the video now.
We are Team Lockwood. We've been friends since kindergarten.
And we invented the toothbrush of the future.
My team had lots of plans for the toothbrush of the future. We made a big and a small prototype. The big one was made from cardboard, leftover packaging, popsicle sticks, pipe cleaners, and paint. The cameras and sensors are in the bristles, and the CPU, that's the brain of the computer, detects cavities, COVID, or the flu. It also has Wi-Fi to talk to our doctors and dentists. Then we decided we could build a 3D printer. I'll let Lillian explain that part.
We thought it would be good to make a 3D printer to help doctors, dentists, and kids like me.
We made a model of the 3D printer.
There are cameras that can take pictures and it sends it all the way to the computer. Then the computer runs a program called CAD, and then it sends the file to the 3D printer, and then they can print our finger just like this.
Now, Rory will show you how our toothbrush will detect COVID or the flu.
Any virus, not the flu or COVID. I can go to school, yeah! I'm going to the bus stop, yay!
But it can also tell your dentist if you have cavities.
Mom, you have to go to the dentist. The toothbrush of the future just told me I have a cavity.
And after I looked at everything that toothbrush had to tell me, I downloaded the information. It said that you perhaps had a cavity inside your mouth. I am now going to look inside your mouth and see if this toothbrush was correct.
Okay.
Yes, you have one small cavity.
Okay.
Your toothbrush of the future is amazing. Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
The good news is it did not detect the flu.
Yes.
Or COVID.
Yes.
Or the cold virus.
Yes.
Fantastic!
And this was our toothbrush of the future. It can detect if you have COVID, the flu, or a cavity.
We hope you enjoy our toothbrush of the future.
And you can just see the energy and the animation with the students. They were elementary students and they did this during the global pandemic. But you can see they touched on many aspects of content that we talked about already, that the learning is social. They all liked working together. They enjoyed the process. It gave them something to do and distracted them during a time that was challenging for all. So we were really excited to work with the teachers and the students with this particular project, of course, but you can see the impacts across the board, especially with the elementary age. It's not too far-fetched to get this done with the elementary groups. I know sometimes it can seem to be a little bit challenging because the students are younger, but they can do this. You just have to be flexible, creative, and find the right space for them to be creative. So I want to switch gears now and talk about what tools and resources you want to share about in your classroom. So what are you doing this year? What tools seem to work for you? And I want to hit some highlights of what I've heard from educators across the United States and Canada and internationally about some really cool tools that work. You can feel free to tap into the chat box and share your ideas of resources and tools that you are currently using in your classroom. And I'm going to highlight some that I've heard from educators. And I just want to share that these are not being endorsed by Toshiba or the NSTA. These are just tools that I've heard that have worked really well for other educators and things that I have used. So the first one I want to talk about is Zigazoo. It's a closed video sharing platform that encourages project-based learning. So I'll walk you through kind of the screen. The closed video sharing platform encourages project-based learning, and you're able to browse ideas and topic areas by topic already included in the platform. So this can kind of get you started on ways to use video sharing and work with your students, and they can create videos as well. In addition, the educators can create a short video that introduces a project. So say you're talking about climate change, for example. You can have a video on that already that gives some context with some brief description, and then the teachers can tap and assign and send projects to students. So they can do all of this within the platform. And I'm seeing lots of cool information in the chat as well. Google Classroom, Wakelet to share social media, Nearpod. I love Flipgrid, Discover E, and Gizmos are also tools that your colleagues are sharing in the chat, which are amazing. So you can check this out. Some of these do require a subscription or a fee, but if you can talk to your school administratives or work something out, then maybe that's a possibility. But you can see with this particular platform, Zigazoo, the closed video sharing platform, you can assign your work. So it kind of looks like the Google Classroom interface where you can see what you assigned, your videos and subscribed, and your class roster. Another fun feature, which I like as a feature in Flipgrid and also what you can do in Pear Deck, is introducing yourself with videos. So I found in this virtual environment, some of the students are a little hesitant to share and really start opening up, but this is a creative way that makes it more collaborative. So they're excited to look and see. You can do this in the early stages of your classroom preparations, of having some fun icebreakers to set that classroom culture and norms by doing some of the introductions and learning more about your classmates before you're putting them in project-based teams. Another platform that I have heard from educators are Maker's Empire. It's like a 3D design hub that promotes innovation, collaboration, and creation. Some of the high school and middle school teachers have shared this one with me. It's really cool. The elementary students can tap in too. You'll be amazed with how much students can do if they're given the opportunity. So this is another one. You can look and see, this is just a graphic from the website on something that the students have created, but it's a fun tool. It's kind of like STEAM, right? You have the art piece, but you're creating prototypes and doing design. So the kids were creating something here to foster creativity and innovation. And then the teacher I've talked with had also shared with me Pen Pal Schools, which is a collaborative space for teachers to create projects and various topics. And you can even create avatars for the student, the teachers, the parents, and the administrators. So you can see things from all different lenses. And that's just a great way to engage students and begin collaborations virtually. So now that you've heard a little bit about students' perspectives and how to engage your students in project-based learning, I wanted to put the context and lens more about the Toshiba NSTA Explore Vision program. You've seen some video clips of students who have engaged with us, and I wanted to share a little bit of backdrop about the competition if you haven't heard about it already. This is our 30th year doing the partnership with the Toshiba and the NSTA, creating the Explore Vision. Students are to envision and imagine and dream big and create attainable solutions in 10 or more years in the future on any topic that they choose. The eligibility requirements are that the students are K through 12 and located in the United States or Canada. And a team is comprised of a coach, which is typically teachers in the classroom. Now, we've all had a dose of homeschooling, I'm sure, or virtual learning. So it may not be physically in the classroom, but it could be your virtual classroom. And it's 2 to 4 students. And so that's a team of 4 already. So if you have a coach and, 2 to 4 students, you can see how the numbers fill up quickly. But say you have 4 students and a coach, so that's 5. You can have an optional 6th person as a mentor, and that's an adult over the age of 18 that's going to help support your team. And that could be a parent, it could be your librarian, it could be another teacher in your school that really helps to coach your team's projects to success. And this is open to all students in public, private, homeschool, and informal education groups. And during this global pandemic, we've seen a lot more of emergence with students and student groups who are taking place outside of school. Maybe they're in a virtual camp or they're engaged neighbors who normally don't go to the same school, but they're able to collaborate and work together. And the schools receive national recognition for student-derived innovations and approaches to technology advancements in the future. And there's no reservation fees or registration fees or kits to purchase. Coaches can lead unlimited teams. So you're not bound by, I can only do 2 teams this year. You can do as many as you can have the bandwidth to do. And the deadline for this program year is January 31st, 2022. And on the right-hand side, I wanted to point out that this is a K through 12 competition, but you can see how the categories of the competition groups are organized. So the K through 3 grades will compete against one another and kind of engage with each other in that regard. Upper elementary, middle school, and high school. So you're not comparing a 10 through 12 project with a K through 3 per se. So I wanted to point that out. And there's more information available on the program's website at explorevision.org, of course. Just to hit the highlight again, this can be done in a virtual space or in person. And if you think about what projects look like, your students are walking through the research and engineering design process. So I can stop sharing my screen here and walk you through the website because there's lots of rich information there. So I'm going to do that and kind of show you what some sample projects look like. All right. And feel free to pop any questions that you have in the chat. I will do my best to cover them before the end of the presentation as well. But consider this a free-flowing, and I can pivot as needed, and I'll keep my eye on the chat as I'm sharing information. And so if you navigate to explorevision.org, you will see exactly what I'm looking at here. Let's see. All right. So right now we have, this is the project format page. You can see depending on what grade levels that you teach. If you're teaching in K through 3 requirements, here's some examples. But the K through 3 projects are storyboards. So I want to highlight that. So if you go through K through 3, you'll see that we have lots of information and examples of what projects look like. So I'm going to click on one. I'm just going to make sure my screen, I don't think it's sharing, so I'm going to have to stop for a second and then pull it back up. All right, there we go. So in this particular one, this is the abstracts that students are creating some type of machine, but we're walking them through exactly what to put on these lines. And this is a storyboard. So they're able to talk about the timeline and history of this particular lung machine. And you can see on the left, they made the prototype for their design out of Legos, things that they already had, but they're talking about a machine or a solution to an issue that's affecting the lung. So they're walking us through the future technology and what they want to do. You can see this is handwritten, there's drawing. So it's a really creative storyboard. So this is something that's attainable for K through 3 students to do. They'll talk about potential breakthroughs that need to happen in science before their technology could be realized. And then they'll also, demonstrate if they have the opportunity of what their prototype would look like. So they went from the Lego design to showing bone marrow and bone marrow stem cells and petri dishes to show. And they're using Legos as the model here. So I think, you can see there's rich amount of examples, and that's just the K through 3. The grades 4 through 6 have an opportunity to do a Google presentation or PowerPoint slide deck of the same information and what we're requesting, or they can follow a manuscript format. So I'm going to show you just exactly what the research paper looks like. It's the same components, just in a different landscape. But the grades 4 through 6 have the option to do it this way or present a slide deck, like I mentioned in Google Slides or PowerPoint, to communicate all of their ideas. And so you'll work with them to create that narrative. Grades 7 through 9 and 10 through 12 do the exact same thing, but it's all manuscript written. So they'll go through, they'll do the history, all of the sections. They can embed images, as you can see here. And they will complete all of the requirements for the sections within the engineering and research design process for the competition. So I'm going to navigate back to my slide deck and touch on some feedback that we've heard and some lessons learned from educators who have engaged with the competition, and also keeping my eye out on the chat for any final questions that you may have. So I will start sharing my screen again. But in talking to educators, one of the biggest value and benefit that has been during this global pandemic was the fact that the Explore Vision competition could be done virtually or in person. And for many teachers and educators across the United States and globally, they weren't able to engage in STEM competitions or a lot of project-based learning initiatives because the students weren't there in person. So the beauty of this program is that it can be done whether in person or virtually through the use of creativity and collaborative tools to get the students engaged. If you have any questions or want to sign up on tips to how to further nurture virtual teams or get your students talking in collaborative spaces, you can certainly reach out to me, and I have my email on this slide and also on the last slide. Absolutely. So I see there's a question about ideas for language classes that incorporate STEM. What we also see that some of the educators, you can formulate teams however you want. So you have 2 to 4 students, you have a coach. Your coach could be a science teacher and the mentor could be a language teacher. And so you're really using that research and the bibliography section and how to cite sources, AMLA, APA style, and how to go about finding credible research sites, and foster that collaboration between science and English and language arts programs. We've also seen collaborations with STEM teachers and scientists that work with their librarian at their school to help the students with that research piece. So you absolutely can do that in both ways. Thank you, Fatima, for asking that question. I wanted to hit some educator highlights before we leave today. I wanted to feature Laura Lawn. She's amazing. She actually was the coach behind the Toothbrush of the Future students in K through 3. She's a retired business consultant who now brings her talents to the classroom. She teaches STEM in action for middle school students at the St. Joseph School. She also volunteers her time at after school enrichment programs like the St. Joseph School in chess, robotics, and STEAM Lego. And her advice to educators, and I let her know that we were doing this, and we also feature this on the Explorer Vision website, as you can see, explorervision.org/news, is that Explorer Vision allows for project-based learning. The students enjoy working together as a team to tackle real-world problems, and in this format, they can bring their solutions to life. She also mentioned celebrating your students' innovations. Once they submit to the competition, she said that she does a video of all the teams providing an overview of what their vision was and has a student showcase to show to the school and their lobby so the entire community can experience the students' innovative ideas. And this in turn excites the classmates and gets the community involved to where, the students are now saying that their school motto is to dream big and no limitations, and they utilize the Explore Vision competition as a way to foster that. She also mentioned that this year the school was doing virtual learning, and to continue Explore Vision for remote students, it was offered as an after-school activity, so they focused on that after school. So they didn't necessarily weave that into the curriculum. It was an extension or a virtual enrichment after school. But the students could volunteer and opt in, and they really liked using Google Drive. We do have time to highlight one more, and I'm still keeping my eye on the chat, so feel free to pop over any information in the chat as well before we wrap up today. I wanted to highlight Covey Denton. She actually submitted information in September of last school year, and at the time she was teaching K through 8 as a science teacher at the Sally B. Howard School of Arts in Wilson, North Carolina. And so I am really pleased to share Covey has been an active supporter for Explore Vision. And before I continue talking, I want to make sure that I pop the link to the survey in the chat. Please do start filling out your evaluations. Give us feedback on this particular session. I would love it. If there's something that you would like to hear more of, I will be doing more of this again at some of the upcoming NSTA regional conferences. So please feel free to give me your feedback and pop that in the chat as well. How much coaching would a teacher provide for students? It really depends. And I think Covey touched on this as well. Some of the students are self-motivated and driven, that it's really just reviewing their ideas and guiding them along. Some coaches have had the opportunity to have mentors and parents who can be mentors, help organize the meetings, so where the teacher is just popping in and out of virtual rooms, coaching the students' ideas. And the other piece of this is that the science teacher doesn't have to be the subject matter expert. You can coach and guide your students along the train of thought and thinking and say, hey, we're in this together. I've had students who go on into nanotechnology and all kinds of interesting astrophysics ideas and solutions that I am not the subject matter expert of, but we explore that together. And then we can bring in a researcher and ask questions as they do a deeper dive to give more feedback on the practicality of their solutions if they really want that. So you could just guide them on, but it really truly depends on the amount of work the students are. And I feel like as a coach, you're cheering them on and making sure they stay on time and follow the timeline to get everything submitted by January 31st. Yes, if you are interested in learning more about Explore Vision, I would say definitely feel free to check out our website at explorevision.org. I would love to hear more from you. I will share my contact information as well and put all of these slides available in the platform for NSTA. So I will fast forward to my final slide, which has my contact information. As I mentioned earlier, I am the Director of Competitions at NSTA, and I'm really excited to hear from all of you. My email is at amckenna@nsta.org. I'm also on LinkedIn, but I will definitely be presenting more this fall and take all of the feedback that you provide from the session review today and evaluation to weave into more content and information for upcoming sessions. So if you have any questions, I will hang out, but I will go ahead and end the recording, but definitely will hang back if you have any questions. But thank you so much for joining. I hope you found the information very informative. As I mentioned, please do fill out that survey, and thank you so much for joining.